I am Seth Grantley, and welcome to the GKT Community Podcast, a podcast where we meet one of the inspirational people who share their knowledge and lived experience on globalknowledgetransfer.com. Welcome to the podcast, Rick.
Thank you.
Can you start by outlining when you're at school, what did you want to be?
Not just sort of go on with the flow. I know that's probably against having all your goals written down, but that's just the way it's worked for me. I've certainly had goals, but I wouldn't say I had a defined outline very early on that I wanted to do.
If you could go back, what advice would you give yourself with all of your knowledge that you've gathered up until now?
I often think of this because I think I was probably too intense, spent too much time inside my own head to study more, to be a little more disciplined. I think I've spent way too much time through my life inside my own head. I did go to one of Brisbane's most prestigious private schools in Brisbane Grammar School, and it was a stretch for my parents to send me there. They were small business owners, and my parents managed to have enough money to scrape and save to send me to grammar. It was a total waste of their money. I never applied myself. It wasn't the school's fault. It was more my fault. It probably wasn't the right school for me. It was far too academic. And I think I would have been better off at a sort of mid-tier school where I could have been maybe a bigger fish in a smaller pond.
You were heavily involved in sport in your teenage years. So about that.
I grew up playing this strange sport called squash, which back in the 70s and 80s was huge, both in Australia and internationally. My parents owned a squash and tennis centre. My greatest passion was playing squash as much as I possibly could, and I think that's what distracted me from school life. I was just focused on being the best squash player that I could. I actually left school in grade 10. I got accepted into the Australian Institute of Sport for squash and spent 5 years in the AIS. Squash dominated my weekends. They dominated every afternoon after school. A lot of fond memories of my friends on squash courts, just, keeping fit and healthy.
What did you take from that experience of high-performance sport that translated and set you up for success in business?
There is so many lessons you can learn from your sporting life and carry it through to your business life. You got to learn how to lose, how to learn from losing, how to be gracious when you win, how to keep improving every day, 1%. There's just so many things you can learn from the journey of sport.
So perhaps you could give us some of your career highlights and summarise your journey from that sporting Rick to the person you are today.
At 21, I clearly remember I was overseas playing in Europe. I obviously lost the night before, and I was lying in bed in the hotel room, staring at the ceiling, going, "What am I doing?" I think once you start to question that, it was game over for me. I stopped playing overseas and came back and had to then find my feet. I had no qualifications, no money behind me, didn't come from a wealthy family. So for me, it was about carving out some sort of purpose. I got a job as a sales rep for a sporting company that sold to schools and did that for 3 or 4 years, which led to opening my own agency business, which was a racket brand because of my squash and tennis background. So it was just a racket brand just by myself, went out, leased a car and a phone, and off I went. That led to being offered other brands, other agencies, and after 12 years, we ended up with 14 brands, 17 staff, turned over $11 million back 18 years ago. Grew from nothing to something, and then sold out to my business partner because I wanted to not just do one thing my whole life.
Where did the family business come back into your career, and how did that play a part in your journey?
The bit I missed was after being a sales rep for a few years, my parents owned this squash and tennis centre. Mum and Dad wanted to retire, and they said, "Could you come and manage it for a few years?" And I did that begrudgingly. It's hard working for your parents because their expectations are very high. It's a 7-day-a-week business, living on site. I was still playing a reasonable level of squash. I was coaching as well. It was all encompassing. It did wear me down. It made a cost in my personal life. I did that for a few years, and then my parents decided to sell the business and the premises. So that's when I moved into the agency business.
What about highlights around gym ownership and being involved with gyms? Can you talk to us about that?
Once I sold my agency business, I was an early investor in the Good Life gym chain, which is now the biggest gym chain in Australia. I was a very minor investor. I didn't have a day-to-day role with that business. One of the main guys from the Good Life chain then went on to become the master franchisee for Snap Fitness. I did several franchises under his master franchisee and ran those for 6 or 7 years. And then I was a partner in a big independent gym. So I've sort of seen all facets of gym ownership, everything from these large multinational gyms to franchise owning to an independent owned gym. Still, the industry excites me because it never sits still. There's always something new, exciting. Some things are fads, some things are there to stay. For me, it's on the right side of the ledger. Could I be a cigarette salesman? No, because it would go against my ethos, regardless how much money I could earn. I like to think with the gym industry, you're helping people to create positivity around their health, around social connections, the science now around exercise, releasing endorphins, making you feel good. We all know that it's one of the first things that psychologists recommend for anyone that is suffering from depression is to get out, move your body. It doesn't have to be the same movement for every person. Find something that you enjoy doing and follow that passion, and that will make you feel better mentally and physically. For me, that's really floated my boat in business, being in the gym industry.
I know you're incredibly committed to a club and racket weekend in Noosa with 11 other mates. Talk to me about how that passion really flows across every aspect of your life.
A good question. Now, as I have more time on my hands, when I do something, I like to do it well. Creating a small group of guys that can go away and just be together as blokes, play some sport, have some nice food. It's just important to me to do that once a year. I think guys don't do enough of that, and it sets them up for failure down the track in their life.
I also know you're a yoga instructor. Why yoga?
I've always done yoga. I think for 35 years. I have fallen in and out of it at times. I like the fact that I have a busy monkey mind, and at least with yoga, it's once or twice a week where I get to turn that monkey mind off and just try and be present in the class.
What do you think the key contributors to your success?
First and foremost, hard work. Because I didn't have the glamorous CV and lots of qualifications, I overcame that by just working incredibly hard. In my business journey, I've probably made every single mistake you can probably make. I overcame that with working harder, just doing more hours. I wouldn't recommend that for someone. I think that there's probably a better balance. I've had a few mentors through my business journey, but I wish now, looking back, that I'd formalised that mentorship and made myself more accountable to them, and that may have avoided me having to make those mistakes.
Could you talk about one mentor that you've had and the impact that person had on you?
I certainly can. I'm still really friendly with this gentleman. His name is Roger Horsler. He was the person who appointed me for my first agency brand. He obviously saw something in me because I didn't have a lot of experience, certainly no qualifications. He appointed me to be the Queensland distributor for this racket brand, and we developed a working relationship over 15 years. He was actually a rare individual. He was an accountant, but he was also someone that you could take into a customer, and he'd ask the right questions. He was very personable, very social. He certainly guided me through those days of my agency business. There's people out there that probably made money, have had bigger success, however you define that, but he's someone I can look to that's had a really good balance in his life.
What do you hope to achieve, and what impact do you hope to have on others by being on globalknowledgetransfer.com and sharing your knowledge and lived experience?
My number one goal is just to help someone that was similar to me 30 years ago, starting a business or in the business at the coalface. They can't see what's in their blind spots, and an accountability person that could meet with them once a month or once a quarter and help them avoid making mistakes. It's about fast tracking their development so that what took me 25 years to get to, maybe they can do it in 15. I've been semi-retired for a while. I've been a serial small business owner my whole life. That's what I know. It's what I grew up with. It's still the thing that floats my boat. As time's gone on, a few years have drifted past, and I'm thinking I don't want to do the 70 hours a week that I was doing. With GKT, it allows me to maybe step into a more of a mentor coaching role.
Every podcast, we ask our guest if they could have an hour with any person, dead or alive, who would that person be and why?
There's a guy called Andre Agassi, who was a tennis player, retired in the 2000s. Always looked at him as someone I admire. If you want to build a perfect tennis player, it doesn't look like Andre Agassi. If you read his book called Open, it's probably the greatest sports biography I've ever read. He had a love-hate relationship with tennis. He had a very domineering Eastern European father, and he wasn't built like the ideal tennis player. He did the absolute best he could do with his God-given talents. But more so, I respect what he's done since he retired. Not many people know this, but I think he's now got something like 76 Agassi colleges throughout America, and started with in Vegas, his hometown, and he educates underprivileged, low socioeconomic children at no cost. He's affecting now hundreds of thousands of lives through education. That's incredible.
Thank you, Rick, for joining us on the podcast today.
That's been my pleasure.
That is all we have time for today. Thanks to our guest and our sponsor, globalknowledgetransfer.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you can be sure to meet more inspirational individuals from the Global Knowledge Transfer community in future episodes.